DNA reveals the truth about a Vietnam POW found alive in the jungle 40 years later. John Robertson was born to be a soldier. He grew up during World War II, and at the age of 17, he traded his high school education for enlistment papers. He was eventually promoted to the Green Berets, and his superiors assigned him to a unique role during the Vietnam War. As part of a CIA-controlled force called the Military Assistance Command, Vietnam Studies and Observation Group, MACV-SOG, now Sergeant Robertson wasn't permitted dog tags or ID. That was because he and his platoon conducted covert, unconventional warfare. Part of this unconventional warfare involved operations in Laos. The nation bordered Vietnam, and American forces were not authorized to be there. In 1968, it was here that enemies shot down Sergeant Robertson and his unit's helicopter. The helicopter crashed in a Laotian mountain range, and since American forces weren't permitted to be there, other units couldn't conduct a proper search and rescue mission. Sergeant Robertson was officially declared MIA, missing in action. Years later, on May 28, 1976, with no sign of Sergeant Robertson, the United States government officially declared him dead. He left behind a wife and 2 children, yet questions about his disappearance lingered. Decades later, in the early 2010s, another Vietnam veteran by the name of Tom Fonce strolled past the Vietnam War Memorial. He felt thankful that his name wasn't etched on that wall. Although Fonce had survived the war, he'd still suffered. He'd lost friends. He'd seen terrible things. Yet in 2008, he decided to travel back to Southeast Asia. Once there, he stumbled upon something incredible, and it all had to do with Sergeant Robertson. In his older age, Fonce began focusing on humanitarian efforts like digging wells in poor villages. And it was that work that brought him and his small company back to the Vietnam region. While there, he heard a curious rumor. The rumor suggested that North Vietnam didn't release all American prisoners of war, not even after the fighting ended in 1973. According to this story, Sergeant Robertson also survived the plane crash, and he now lived in the jungles of Vietnam. Could it be true? If the veteran would go all the way in helping someone he didn't even know, Jorgensen told the Daily Mail, then whether Sergeant Robertson was alive or not didn't matter. Fonce's journey would be a good story in itself. And so the unlikely duo traveled to Vietnam with cameras in tow. After tracking rumors and speaking with locals, Fonce and Jorgensen were led to a house in the woods. There, they met a man named Dang Tan Ngoc, who revealed something shocking. Ngoc claimed that he was the missing soldier, Sergeant John Robertson. He explained he'd been captured by the Vietnamese after the crash, and his captors tortured him for 4 years, after which he finally escaped. According to Ngoc, he then ended up in the care of a Vietnamese woman who nursed him back to health and eventually married him. Together, they had 2 children. To protect his identity, Robertson assumed the identity of Dang Tan Ngoc. The man's story and character, however, had its fair share of holes. He didn't speak English, claiming to have forgotten the language after decades without speaking it. Stranger, he'd made no effort to contact his American wife or kids, whose names he couldn't remember. But as Jorgensen told the Toronto Star, Fonce was very skeptical, grilled this guy up and down, trying to get him to break, to say, "Oh no, I'm just making it up," and he was adamant that he was that guy. Fishy story and all, Jorgensen filmed what he'd eventually called Unclaimed, a documentary about the journey to reunite Ngoc with his American sister, Jean Robertson Holly. Surely his sister would know if this man was really who he claimed to be. With all the pieces in place, the meeting between the alleged Sergeant Robertson and Robertson Holly was set to occur. When the two finally saw each other, the resulting interaction was incredible. "When I held his head in my hands and looked in his eyes," Robertson Holly said in Unclaimed, "there was no question that was my brother." With unconditional love and unwavering faith in his identity, she welcomed her brother back into her life. But while the tearful reunion might have been a statement on never giving up hope or a beautiful image of a family reunited, too many questions, like the rest of those generated by the murky war, were left unanswered. That is, until recently. In 2009, the Defense Prisoner of War Missing Personnel Office stated in a recently exposed memo that Dang Tan Yok was a known imposter, a con artist who'd been impersonating Sergeant Robertson since 1982. Before filming ever took place, U.S. officials had interviewed this man, and under pressure, he revealed that he was not Sergeant Robertson. In 2008, he was caught impersonating the soldier another time and fingerprinted. Those aware of Nyok's cons weren't surprised that people like Fonts believed him. Don Bendel, an award-winning author and himself a Vietnam War veteran, claimed he's a guy from France, an imposter who's been used to scam money from well-meaning veterans and others who would love to see any POW rescued. Additionally, many noted how impossible Dang Tan Yok's story truly was. As retired Special Forces Captain Robert No wrote, "No one forgets to speak their native language after that long." Yet one mystery still remained. Robertson Holly was so certain the man was her brother that she refused a DNA test. But why? Jorgensen understood. "It's kind of like, that was an ugly war. It was a long time ago. We just want it to go away," he said. Was she simply desperate to believe she never lost her brother in the war? Eventually, Robertson's niece, Cindy Hanna, had a DNA test conducted, and "We've received the results," she wrote at the time, "and sadly, there was not a match. This is very disappointing." "As my mother has said, we only want to do right by my Uncle John," Hanna said, "and if that means the man claiming to be my uncle is actually another lost American and doesn't know who he is, we intend to seek the truth on our own terms." In the end, Jorgensen's filmmaker's instincts about Fonz's determination proved to be correct. While Sergeant John Robertson's true fate might remain a mystery, Fonz's journey to recover a man he'd never met made for an incredible story. Check out these other videos from Let Me Know. If you haven't made the move to subscribe to our channel, all you need to do is click on that red subscribe button. Thank you for watching.